Hey everybody, this is Kennedy Hawk from the MCM crew. Welcome to Technical Thursday number 2 for Marvel Champions, and today, in honor of Halloween, we're going to go over a Mutagen Formula strategy guide. So let's delve right in. Mutagen Formula is one of the two scenarios from the Green Goblin scenario pack. It's a lot of people's favorite scenario because it was one of the first scenarios that really pushed us past the core set into this difficult regime of the scenarios that were to follow. It's a really fun scenario with a tough villain that has a lot of minions out there. So the story is that Green Goblin has unleashed a toxin mutagen gas in New York City. So you need to be prepared to be overwhelmed not just by the Green Goblin himself, but hordes of New York City citizens who have been transformed into these hideous goblin creatures. If you thought Ultron was the minion swarm villain, just wait until you have played Green Goblin Mutagen Formula. In addition to this minion swarm, he has a new way to scale threat on a lot of his side schemes and one of his main schemes. So prepare to swat away these goblins as we go through this scenario set right before Halloween. So first, let's look through the villain progression. This is one of the villains, just like Ultron, that has the biggest change between standard and expert. So Green Goblin Stage 1 has Scheme of 1, Attack of 2 with the forced response. After Green Goblin attacks and damages you, place one threat in the main scheme. Note, this can be avoided by chumping because it's after Green Goblin attacks and damages you. So after he attacks you does trigger, but if he damages a minion, or not a minion, an ally, allies are not you according to the latest RRG, so I think that his force response won't trigger if you block with an ally. So here we have, after Green Goblin attacks and damages you, place one threat in the main scheme. Not that big of a deal, right? You can control this by liberally using allies constantly to just block Green Goblin. Then we go to stage 2. He goes to 2 scheme and 2 attack. Okay, so 1 stat pump just like normal. Same forced response as the first card. When revealed, deal 2 encounter cards to each player. 2 encounter cards. And that means when you're starting an expert on stage 2, you start the game with 2 encounter cards in front of you. So Star-Lord laughs at that, but a lot of characters don't. And that's because some of the cards in Green Goblin's set can be really nasty. So one of the clues I have for you is if you're gonna play an expert, you have to have a way to like set up really quick or to be able to like survive this opening turn, which might include staying in alter ego form in case a bunch of attack cards come out on Green Goblin. Then let's look at Green Goblin number 3. Goes up 1 again in stats, this time on his attack. But now that forced response is after he attacks and damages you, place 2 threat in the main scheme. So that's worse. Definitely worse. And when revealed, deal 3 encounter cards to each player. So in 4 players, starting with 12 encounter cards on the board, you're going to get 1 each in the villain phase. So you're going to at least, what would that be? 4 times 4, 16 encounter cards? That's a lot. So this is a huge jump from standard to expert, and one of the things you can do to counteract this is you can try to burn through that second stage as fast as possible. You can imagine if you're playing standard and solo, you get Green Goblin 1 down to 15, you wait until you have like a bunch of allies on the board and kind of 18 damage there, so you can flip him, defeat him before you even have to flip those encounter cards. Now you can't do that in expert, you're going to have to survive that initial turn, but then you can try to do it. It is difficult in like multiplayer to get all 4 players to be able to do 20 damage, but you can get there, and you can definitely do it in solo or 2-player, like with some like strategized decks. So that's how the villain progresses. Let's check out his main scheme. His main scheme starts with 1A, and it puts a Goblin Thrall minion into play engaged with each player. We'll look at what those are in the next slide, but you're going to start with a minion engaged with you. The 1B side has a when completed text. In player order, each player not engaged with a goblin minion must discard 3 cards from the encounter deck and put the first goblin minion they discarded this way into play engaged with them. So if you don't have a minion, you're probably getting one, or you're getting closer to an acceleration token. This can be really, really annoying. And if you're going to let this pop, I recommend doing it when most of you have 1 minion in play, maybe a weak minion that you think you can take out really quickly. Note, this is one of the first times that, I think it is the actual first time, that threat started not at 0 on a scheme. So threat starts at 2 per player here, so you have some pressure for your Justice players right away. Going to 2A, the 2A side is just flavor text and advanced to 2B. Going to 2B, we have something really interesting here. So first of all, it's 11 threat per player, so we are very generous with our thresholds in this scheme. 7 plus 11, 18 per player is a lot to work with. But it starts with 4 per player on it. So again, in 4 player, that's 16 threats starting on the main scheme. And it goes up by X. Not X per player, just X. And X is equal to the number of goblin enemies in play. And this includes the villain himself. So you're going to end up always at least going up by 1. So in solo, that's the minimum this could go up by. In 4-player, the minimum is still 1. So if you can control the goblin minions that are out there and make sure at the start of the villain phase you only have green goblin out every turn, the main scheme's going up by a trivial amount for 4 players. So that can be really, really powerful. Then again, it's like the minimum is 1 in solo, and it's normally 1 per player, so it doesn't give you much breathing room. So remember about that X. If you're going to let him scheme against the first player and advance the main scheme, then all of that player's minions are going to scheme, even the ones that came out from the when completed. So if multiple players are in alter ego form when he progresses the first scheme, it can add to a lot of threat really, really fast. So be a little bit careful when you let that pop if you choose to. All right, let's meet these goblin characters. So I said we talk about goblin thrall, so this is what you're going to start and play engage with you. 1 scheme, 1 attack, 3 health, guard. Pretty basic. No boost icons, but it does have a boost ability. Put Goblin Thrall into play engaged with you. So this means if Green Goblin attacks you, his boost ability is going to put that Goblin Thrall into play engaged with you, and that engagement is going to be really annoying because then that Goblin is also going to attack you if this is his first activation against you for the turn. On top of that, this is a guard minion, so if this comes into play and you want to do some response to his attack, like counterpunch, you've now got a guard minion in your way, and you've lost your opportunity for counterpunch. At least that's the way I understand it. So really annoying. There's 6 of those in the deck, and you're starting with 1 to 4 out in play. So in 4-player, there's only 2 left in the deck, which can be kind of forgiving. All right, Goblin Soldier. 1 scheme, 1 attack, 5 health. When defeated, deal 1 damage to the engaged player. So this is a way you could kill other players on accident if you kill all their soldiers while they're in front of them. There are 4 of these with the same boost ability. So again, these don't look like they have boost icons, but they're not really 0 because this minion is going to attack you as well. This is where I say, bring target acquired. Just do it. Like, just bring target acquired. It's so good in this scenario. For the cost of 2 resources, target acquired plus the 1 you used to play it, you can stop one of these from coming into play. So that avoids so much. It avoids 1 threat or 1 damage that would happen from that character attacking you. And it saves you 3 to 5 damage the next turn when you have to get rid of that minion. So for 2 resources, you're like preventing a threat and dealing 5 damage. Seems pretty good. And you avoid the when defeated effect on that Goblin Soldier. So target acquired is so good in this scenario because you can keep those goblins out of play very often by eliminating them as boost icons. So I would include 2 target acquireds, minimum, in every deck that goes up against Mutagen Formula. Like, all 4 players, just bring it. You're not going to regret having it in play. All right, there's more goblins. Don't worry. So we've had 10 so far, but we also have Monster and Goblin Knight. So these are unique goblin minions. They both have the elite and the goblin trait. Monster's 1 scheme, 3 attack with 6 health. When revealed, you are stunned. If you are already stunned, take 2 damage. Really annoying. And their boost ability, which is even more annoying. After this activation, shuffle this card into the encounter deck. So it's got 2 boost icons, and it shuffles itself back in. So you're either going to get it as a minion, or you're going to get it as a boost card again, or Scarlet Witch is going to discard it, which could be cool. So that's one trick you could do, but not very reliable. So again, target acquired. Get Monster out of the deck, into the discard pile, so you don't have to worry about that 2 boost icon card. Because as you'll notice, like, all those other ones were kind of 1s because they were just minions. We haven't seen any other 2 or 3 boost icon cards because there's not a ton in this scenario. There's like 5 or 6 total, which I guess is a ton when you compare it to other scenarios, but it's not a super boost heavy deck unless you let these characters keep shuffling back in. Goblin Knight has a similar ability, 2 boost icons, and boosts back into the encounter deck. He's got 2 scheme, 2 attack, and 7 health, and a forced response after he attacks you. Discard 1 card from the encounter deck. If that character is a goblin minion, put it into play engaged with you. So he can just spam these goblin minions out. You do not want to let these characters stay in play, and you do not want to let them shuffle back into the deck. So you just want to get rid of them as soon as you see them, or stun them. Like in Goblin Knight's case, Spider Girl can be really good to like cancel their activations. But really, you just want to cancel them with target acquired. Bring target acquired. Bring target acquired. If you're bringing a card, bring target acquired. Okay, I said it enough. So 12 goblin minions. Not too bad. Alright, so we've got some attachments too. So we already talked about Goblin Glider and Pumpkin Bombs in the Goblin Gimmicks set on Modular Monday this week. But there's one more attachment within this scenario itself, and that is Hysteria, attached to Green Goblin. When Green Goblin schemes or attacks, give him 1 additional boost card for that activation. Hero actions spend mental resources to discard this card. This is nasty. This is like giving claws ability to a villain that's better, but also for when he schemes, which is the worst time to have double boost cards. That is insane. You cannot let this stay out there. In 4-player, if this happens, it doesn't like go away. So this activates against every player. So unless you're swinging for lethal in the next turn, someone needs to get rid of Hysteria. If you let it sit out there for more than one turn, you're setting yourself up to lose. So if you get multiple attachments out there, you can probably ignore Goblin Glider. It might make his ability trigger more if you're not jumping. You can probably ignore Pumpkin Bombs. You cannot ignore Hysteria. It would be hysterical for you to do so. So just get rid of it. Make it gone. All right, let's talk about the side schemes. So there are 5 side schemes in this deck. What you need to do to counter these side schemes is keep the number of Goblin minions under your control. Don't let him puke a million Goblin minions on you. And, in case I didn't say enough, one way you can do that is by bringing target acquired. So go buy your Black Widow packs, a bunch of them, because you're going to want them for every player. Alright, so we've got 2 copies of Goblin Reinforcements. Just 2 threat on it, so not too bad. Like, that's proper scaling for multiplayer. When revealed, place 1 threat here for each Goblin minion in play. Hold the phone. So if you're starting with 4 Thralls in play, and you're getting 2 encounter cards each in Expert, if you don't all eliminate your Thrall minions, this comes into play with 6 threat on it. So again, you need to keep those Goblin minions under control, keep them low in the count, because you do not want this to come out and have 10 threat on it with a hazard icon, because it's just going to lead to more Goblin minions. So what's another reason you'd want to have not a ton of Goblin minions in play? Goblin Nation. It's a 1-of card. Each Goblin enemy, including the villain, gets +1 attack. And it comes into play on boost, so another target acquired target, and it has 2 threat per player. So if it's just the villain in play, and you're controlling all those Goblin minions, you might not even care about Goblin Nation. It's like a breather, like it gives them +1 attack, but you're probably chumping with allies, so that's okay. But if you have like 10 Goblin minions in play, this adds 10 damage to your team a turn. That sounds horrible. So control the number of Goblin minions, run target acquired. Acquire the targets, all of them. Alright, finally we have 2 copies of Overrun, which has double acceleration icons as its thing, and only 1 threat per player as its scheme, or as its threat. So double acceleration tokens is a little scary, right? If you leave this out for 2 turns, then like they're removing the 4th threat. That 4th threat has been placed onto the main scheme, so you can't leave this out for too long. But the when defeated text is really scary too. In player order, each player, so this scales poorly with number of players, must discard 2 cards from the encounter deck and put each Goblin minion they discarded this way into play engaged with them. That's terrifying, right? So we are going to be discarding 8 cards from the encounter deck and searching for Goblins, and we know there's 12 of them in the deck. So use that to your advantage, right? If you know there's 12 of them in the deck and you see 6 of them on the board already, it's probably pretty safe to get rid of Overrun. You're probably in a bad spot, but it's probably pretty safe. Or if you look at the discard pile and you see 10 of them there, Overrun's really safe to hit. So think about when you're going to hit Overrun and really control that, right? Wait until you've seen most of the minions, but there's still cards left in the deck, because then you're just going to be discarding side schemes and treacheries that you don't care about. The best thing you can do is get like 1 Goblin minion out of this 8, or 0. The worst thing you can do is get like 8 of them, which is horrible, and I think the max I've gotten was 7 in 4-player once, and we were very upset about it. I'm just going to say that it was an upsetting moment. So game this a little bit, right? You need to control how many minions they play. You need to know where those minions are so that you can trigger Overrun correctly, but also Goblin Reinforcements and Goblin Nation don't bite you in the butt. Alright, let's talk about the Treacheries. So there are 4 Treachery cards. First, let's talk about this. There are 4 extra activation cards. There are 2 copies of Death from Above, I believe 1 copy of ICU, and 1 copy of Overconfidence. So first, let's talk about Death from Above. This card is like the worst assault ever printed. 1 boost icon. Nobody cares about that. When revealed, Alter Ego, Green Goblin schemes against you with +X scheme, where X is equal to the villain's stage number. So already, it's like an advanced when you're an Alter Ego, but with +1 scheme. And the villain just schemed against you because you're an Alter Ego. So he's placing a ton of threat. That's like terrifying. When revealed hero, Green Goblin gets attacks with +X attack, where X is equal to the villain's stage number. So again, he's attacking with like a free boost card, right? And it's a known boost card that's a 1, 2, or 3. So like this is another reason you need to burn through him on that second stage, whether it's 2 in standard or 3 in expert. If he starts drawing into death from aboves, which he might, because he's going to get a bunch of encounter cards when he goes to that stage, all of a sudden you're going to be taking attacks for, 6 plus a boost card to face. 6 plus a boost card is a lot. It's difficult to survive without backflip and a ton of allies. So be afraid of death from above. It is deadly, and it can come from above. Alright, next, Overconfidence. Another card that in Alter Ego forces Green Goblin to scheme. This can be really painful, because double scheme activations in Alter Ego form, that's like what loses games against Rhino when you flip to Alter Ego and draw advance. So we've got 3 extra chances of that on top of the 2 advances from the normal deck. So Green Goblin schemes if at least 3 threat was placed by this activation, which, I mean, he's got 2 scheme in level 2 and level 3, so he's probably going to place 3 threat. This card gains Surge. That's like the worst thing that can happen. An attack or scheme and a Surge. Like, right there, you know that this card, like, his smug face that he's staring at you with is making you angry already. Same thing happens for attacking. He attacks you in hero form. If at least 3 damage was dealt by this activation, this card gains Surge. So you can circumvent that a little bit by defending, right? If you defend with an ally, he could still deal 3 damage to that ally, which is unfortunate. So you kind of got to defend with your character to get that defense stat and that damage prevention. You could bring things like Subdue to cancel this, but it's only a one-of, so like bringing a bunch of decks in your card to hope they're in your hand at the right time seems like a poor plan. But something like Counterintelligence, or Emergency or something to reveal or like to keep that like threat, scheming, searching under control is something that might be applicable. And finally, we have the card that has killed me so many times, I See You. When revealed, Green Goblin attacks you. Hold the phone. That wasn't when the revealed hero. Green Goblin attacks you regardless of what you're doing. He sees you paying rent for Aunt May or whatever you're doing. So if you are in Alter Ego form, do not give the villain a boost card for this activation. Thank goodness. But still really nasty. And here's another boost ability. This is one you're probably not going to cancel with target acquired. Don't fall for that trap. This card gets +1 boost icon if at least 1 Goblin minion is engaged with you. I've seen people give this +1 for each Goblin minion. Don't do that. That's not what the card says. Do what the card says, which is 1 boost icon, maximum extra. So this could be a 2-pip or a 1-pip. Alright, we've also got 2 copies of Wicked Ambitions. So in case Overrun wasn't enough to make Goblins come out, and in case Goblin Knight wasn't, and in case 1B popping wasn't, we've got a Treachery that does it too. Wicked Ambitions. Discard X cards from the encounter deck where X is equal to double the villain's stage number. Each time a Goblin minion is discarded this way, choose to either take 3 damage or put that minion into play engaged with you. A lot of times you can almost not choose to take the 3 damage because you'll end up defeating your hero, especially with lower hit point heroes. So things like Endurance and Honorary Adventure to like pump your like health up so that you can actually afford to do that, or Healing are actually really good ways to counter Wicked Ambitions. Right? You could bring Treachery cancels to cancel it, but if you just brought First Aids, then you're not counting on drawing them at the right time. You just keep healing to full and taking the damage to avoid these minions, which can let you then trigger Overrun. So a little bit of combo synergy there. But really nasty Treacheries, like 4 extra activation cards, plus the 4, like the 2 assaults and the 2 advances from the standard set. So we're up to 8, plus Gang Up is 9. That's 9 extra activation cards in standard mode. That's insane-o. Like, be prepared for Green Goblin to attack you more than once, especially on the turns that he gets those extra encounter cards. Alright, so what do we do? I'm going to give you 5 tips to feeding Green Goblin, and I've said some of them along the way. In case you didn't hear me say it, bring target acquired. It is such a clutch card in this scenario, and you should be looking at every scenario you play. You can play them blind first like I do. That's what I love to do, is play them blind and not know what's going into it. But I'm going to tell you a secret. When I do that, because of Green Goblin, I bring target acquired, because who knows what kind of boost abilities are going to come up on your blind playthrough. But once you've played through blind and you can look through all the cards, look at what kind of like things are happening and think about the value you're getting for 1 resource in target acquired. If all you're doing is preventing something majorly minor, then it's probably not worth it. But here we're preventing 5 health and 3 health guard minions from coming into play. That's like 3 points of damage and the thing attacking you, like making the card a 0 boost card. All good things. Just bring target acquired. You will not regret it, and you will cheer every time you get to cancel a minion coming into play. Alright, next, control the board. Make sure there are, like, no Goblin minions in play as often as you can. None of this like tanking minions stuff, because it hurts you, right? There were a ton of side schemes that it hurt you for. There were a ton of main scheme threat things that it hurt you for. So look for AoE damage, bring things like Shield Toss and Dance of Death so you can spread a bunch of damage out and like really efficiently deal with all those minions. And then bring a minion handler if you're playing a multiplayer. And by a minion handler, I don't mean they have to be an aggression player, they have to be Thor, they have to be Rocket, but bring someone whose job is just at the beginning of their turn, they blow up all the minions. If it's She-Hulk doing a bunch of 1-2 punches into some Goblin Thralls, that's okay. If it's Captain America, like searching for Shield Toss every turn and just blowing up the board, totally fine. But bring someone whose job is to control the minions so that everybody else can worry about threat and dealing with the main threat, which is Green Goblin himself. Alright, next is to burn him down in stage 2 or 3. So this means like the second stage you reveal, right? So if it's in standard, that's stage 2, or in expert, that's stage 3. Like have burst in your deck to the point that you can just burst through him in one turn. The best games our 4-player group has had against Green Goblin, we had one game at least where we all just got allies from all our different aspects onto the board. We like got Green Goblin stage 2 down to like 1 point of health. Black Cat punched him at the start of the next turn, and we just bursted for like 20 to 25 damage each and got rid of him in one turn. So yeah, he dealt us 12 encounter cards, and we didn't even flip him over because we didn't have to worry about it. That's not always possible, and sometimes like you can fall into this trap of like, well, how long should I delay, right? Realistically, if you can get him pretty close and you think you have strong enough setup to survive the 3 encounter cards, it's okay to flip him. But if you have the burst built into your deck, try to burst him down, because it's going to be a little bit more controllable than seeing what the luck of the draw on those 4 encounter cards is. Like we mentioned, there's 9 extra activations. So if he gets 4 Green Goblin attacks you cards, you're pretty boned. Like that's all 3 of your allies and you getting hit in the face. There's not much you can do. Okay, so try to burn him down. Play around the side schemes. All of the side schemes had things that you could sort of control, right? You can decide when to remove Overrun when you know most of the minions aren't in the deck. And you can control how many minions are out so that Goblin Reinforcements isn't as big of a deal because it's only got 2 threat on it. And you can decide whether or not Goblin Nation matters by eliminating those minions. So this is kind of like a repeat of number 2, but clear the board and then make it so that those side schemes are like size of relief for you when you draw one, because normally you're like, oh, side scheme. But in this scenario, you can be like, side scheme, I already got this in the bag. So take advantage of that. And then you can let 1B pop. I advised against it earlier for the most part, because especially if this is your first couple times playing the scenario, 1B popping can be truly deadly. But again, you can control when that happens. So if you're playing in a 4-player game and you let Green Goblin scheme against the first player and pop 1B, that's going to throw a minion out on everybody. That's going to attack all those players or scheme against several of those players, and it can be just snowballingly bad. So if you're playing a 4-player, make sure that he schemes against the 4th player when doing that. That way all the minions come out, you are all able to deal with the minions before they impact the main scheme, and you can have really good board control with a high threat threshold and low threat amounts going up. So that's one way to sort of like take advantage of 1B. So really think about when you're going to let 1B pop, and make sure it's when you're in control. It's not because you accidentally drew into it in advance and you let the threat sit too high before it got there. So those are my top 5 tips for Green Goblin Mutagen Formula. He is one of people's favorite scenarios, so I encourage you to leave some comments below. What are your favorite ways to deal with Mutagen Formula, and what are your favorite modular sets to run with it? The recommended modular set is Goblin Gimmicks. Luckily, that doesn't add any Goblin cards or any extra activations. But if you wanted to be a real jerk, you could do like Weapon Master or something, so he gets like 10 extra or 11 extra activations. So what is your favorite modular set to use with Green Goblin Mutagen Formula? So have a great Thursday and have a happy Halloween this coming weekend, and we will see you tomorrow for Flexible Friday.